The morning mist still clung to the cobblestones of Rosemary Lane when Elena Martinez wheeled her flower cart through the narrow streets of the old quarter. Her weathered hands, stained green from years of arranging stems, gripped the wooden handles as she navigated around puddles left by the previous night's rain. At 73, Elena had been delivering flowers for nearly half a century, and she took pride in never having made a delivery mistake. Until today. Elena's cart was loaded with two very different bouquets that Tuesday morning. The first was a modest arrangement of white lilies and baby's breath, ordered by Mrs. Chen at 42 Maple Street for her late husband's memorial service. The second was an extravagant display of red roses, orchids, and golden sunflowers, commissioned by successful businessman Richard Hartwell for his girlfriend's birthday at the penthouse on Oak Avenue. The addresses were clearly written on Elena's weathered notebook, 42 Maple Street and 42 Oak Avenue. Simple enough, she thought, humming an old Spanish lullaby her grandmother had taught her decades ago. But as Elena's mind wandered to memories of her own late husband Miguel, who had passed away just 6 months earlier, she found herself thinking about Mrs. Chen's quiet grief. Elena had seen that look before, the hollow emptiness in someone's eyes when they've lost their life partner. It was the same look she saw in her own mirror each morning. Lost in these melancholy thoughts, Elena made her first delivery to what she believed was 42 Maple Street. She climbed the 3 flights of stairs in the modest apartment building, her knees protesting each step, and knocked gently on the door. The door opened to reveal a young woman with paint-stained fingers and tired eyes. This was Maya Chen, 28 years old, though she looked older with the weight of responsibility that had settled on her shoulders. Maya had been caring for her grandmother, Mrs. Chen, through her final illness, and today marked exactly 1 year since her grandmother's passing. "Flower delivery," Elena said softly, holding out the extravagant bouquet of roses, orchids, and sunflowers. Maya stared at the magnificent arrangement, confusion flickering across her face. I think there's been a mistake. I didn't order any flowers." Elena checked her notebook, squinting at her handwriting. 42 Maple Street, right? Maya nodded slowly. "Yes, but I really didn't." "Sometimes," Elena interrupted gently, noticing the young woman's paint-stained apron and the easel visible in the background. "The universe sends us exactly what we need, even when we don't ask for it." There was something in the older woman's voice, a warmth that Maya hadn't heard in months. Since her grandmother's death, Maya had thrown herself into her art, painting portraits for local families to pay the bills, but she'd forgotten what it felt like to receive unexpected kindness. "They're beautiful," Maya whispered, accepting the bouquet. The sunflowers seemed to catch the morning light streaming through her apartment window, filling the small space with golden warmth. Elena smiled, something stirring in her chest that she hadn't felt since Miguel's death. "You take care of yourself, mija," she said, using the endearment that had come so naturally with her own children, now grown and living far away. As Elena made her way to what she thought was Oak Avenue, she felt lighter somehow. There had been something special about that young woman, a loneliness that mirrored her own, but also a spark of creativity and life that reminded Elena of her younger self. Meanwhile, at the actual 42 Oak Avenue, Richard Hartwell paced nervously in his penthouse apartment. Today wasn't just his girlfriend's birthday. He had planned to propose. The engagement ring sat in his jacket pocket, a 3-carat diamond that had cost him 3 months' salary. The flowers were meant to set the scene for the most important question of his life. When Elena arrived at the penthouse building, the doorman directed her to the top floor. She knocked on the pristine white door, still thinking about the young artist and how the flowers had seemed to bring light to her eyes. Richard opened the door, expecting to see his usual florist. Instead, he found a small, elderly woman holding a simple bouquet of white lilies and baby's breath. "Mr. Hartwell?" Elena asked, consulting her notebook again. "Yes, but these aren't..." Richard stared at the modest arrangement. These were memorial flowers. He knew because his own mother had been buried with similar lilies just 2 years ago. "These aren't what I ordered." Elena's heart sank as she realized her mistake. She looked at her notebook again, seeing her error clearly now, But before she could apologize, Richard surprised her. "Actually," he said quietly, taking the lilies, "these are perfect." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Perfect?" "But, Signor, these are my mother's favorite flowers," Richard finished, his voice thick with emotion. "She died 2 years ago, and I was going to propose to my girlfriend today, but seeing these—" He paused, holding the lilies carefully. "My mother always told me that the right person would love me for who I am, not what I could buy them. I think I've been trying so hard to impress Amanda with expensive things that I forgot what really matters." Elena watched as this successful, well-dressed man, probably younger than her own son, stood in his expensive apartment, cradling the simple flowers like they were made of gold. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman," Elena said gently. She was. She would have loved these flowers. Richard looked up at Elena with new eyes. "What's your name?" "Elena Martinez." "Elena, I think you just saved me from making a big mistake. I need to have a real conversation with Amanda, not hide behind expensive gestures." As Elena made her way back down from the penthouse, she couldn't help but smile. 2 deliveries, 2 mistakes, and somehow everything felt exactly as it should be, but the story was far from over. 3 days later, Maya Chen sat in Washington Square Park sketching the morning joggers and dog walkers. The magnificent bouquet Elena had delivered was now arranged in her grandmother's antique vase, brightening her entire apartment. Something about receiving those flowers had awakened a creativity in Maya that she hadn't felt in months. She found herself painting with more vibrant colors, capturing joy and hope, instead of just the melancholy that had consumed her art since her grandmother's death. As she sketched, Maya noticed an elderly woman sitting alone on a nearby bench, feeding pigeons from a small paper bag. There was something familiar about her. "Elena?" Maya called out, recognizing the flower vendor. Elena looked up, her face breaking into a genuine smile when she saw Maya approaching with her sketchbook. "Mija, how are you? How are the flowers?" "Still beautiful," Maya said, settling beside Elena on the bench. "I wanted to thank you again. I know they weren't really meant for me, but they came at exactly the right time." Elena studied Maya's face, noting the brighter eyes and the paint stains and cheerful colors on her fingers instead of the drab grays from before. "Sometimes the universe has a plan we don't understand," Elena said, watching a pigeon hop closer for crumbs. "Speaking of plans," Maya said, opening her sketchbook, "I've been thinking about you since you left. Would you mind if I sketched you? There's something about your face. You have such kind eyes, but there's sadness there too." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. No one had really seen her, truly seen her, since Miguel died. Her children called, dutifully once a week, but they were busy with their own lives. Her few remaining friends were either gone or too caught up in their own ailments to really connect. "I would be honored," Elena whispered. As Maya sketched, the 2 women began to talk. Elena shared stories about Miguel, about their early years when they had nothing but love and dreams, about building their flower business from a single cart into a small shop, about watching their 3 children grow up and move away to chase their own dreams. Maya talked about her grandmother, about learning to paint by watching Mrs. Chen create beautiful watercolors of flowers and birds, about the loneliness of being an artist trying to make it in an expensive city, about how she'd been questioning whether she was good enough to keep trying. "Your grandmother raised an artist," Elena said, watching Maya's pencil capture the lines around her eyes with tender precision. "She would be proud." "How do you know?" "Because I see the love in everything you draw. That doesn't come from technique. That comes from the heart." When Maya finished the sketch, both women stared at it in wonder. Elena had never seen herself portrayed with such warmth and dignity. In Maya's drawing, she wasn't just a lonely old woman feeding pigeons. She was someone with depth, wisdom, and beauty that came from a life fully lived. "Maya," Elena said slowly, "I have an idea. That idea would change everything." Elena's flower shop had been struggling since Miguel's death. She'd been running it alone, but at 73, the physical demands were becoming too much. She'd been considering selling, But the thought of strangers taking over the business she and Miguel had built together broke her heart. "What if," Elena said, "you came to work with me? I could teach you about flowers, and you could help me with the business side, maybe even paint signs, create beautiful arrangements that are also works of art." Maya's eyes widened. "Elena, I don't know anything about flowers, but you know about beauty, about bringing joy to people. And," Elena smiled mischievously, "you could help me make sure I deliver the right bouquets to the right people." They both laughed, and Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in over a year: hope. Meanwhile, across town, Richard Hartwell was having the most honest conversation of his adult life. He had taken Amanda to the same park where Elena and Maya had met, carrying the simple white lilies in a mason jar instead of an expensive vase. "Amanda," he said, "I need to ask you something important, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Amanda, expecting a proposal, sat up straight and smiled. "Of course. Do you love me, or do you love the lifestyle I can provide?" The question caught her off guard. Amanda had been expecting romantic words and a diamond ring, not this searching look in Richard's eyes. What do you mean?" "I mean, if I lost everything tomorrow, the penthouse, the car, the expensive dinners, would you still want to be with me?" Amanda stared at the simple flowers, so different from the elaborate gifts Richard usually showered her with. In the silence that followed, they both found their answer. "I think," Amanda said quietly, "we've been trying to be people we're not. I do care about you, Richard, but I think we both know this isn't real love." Richard nodded, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "I think you're right." They parted as friends, both recognizing that they had been playing roles in a relationship that looked perfect from the outside but lacked the deep connection that real love requires. 2 weeks later, Richard found himself walking past a small flower shop on Rosemary Lane. Something about the new hand-painted sign caught his eye, watercolor flowers that seemed to dance across the wooden board. He pushed open the door and was greeted by the most beautiful floral arrangements he'd ever seen. These weren't just bouquets, they were living art pieces that seemed to capture emotions in petals and stems. "Can I help you?" asked a young woman, with paint-stained fingers and the brightest smile he'd seen in months. "I'm looking for something special," Richard said. "Something real." Maya's eyes lit up. "Real is our specialty. Elena," she called toward the back of the shop, "we have a customer looking for something authentic." Elena emerged from the workroom, her hands full of sunflowers, and stopped short when she saw Richard. "Senor Hartwell, how are you? Did everything work out with your girlfriend?" Richard smiled. "Actually, it worked out perfectly. We realized we weren't right for each other, and we're both happier now. Those lilies you brought me, they helped me remember what my mother always said about finding real love." "And what was that?" Maya asked, curious. "That it should feel like coming home." Elena and Maya exchanged a meaningful look. In the 2 weeks they'd been working together, the flower shop had been transformed. Elena's decades of knowledge combined with Maya's artistic vision had created something magical. More than that, they had both found the family connection they'd been missing. "We have just the thing," Elena said, winking at Maya. "Maya, show him the New Beginnings arrangement you created." As Maya led Richard to a stunning display of white roses, green hydrangeas, and delicate eucalyptus, Elena smiled to herself. She recognized something in the way Richard looked at Maya. The same spark she'd seen in Miguel's eyes 50 years ago when he first walked into her family's flower stall in Mexico City. "It's beautiful," Richard said, but he wasn't looking at the flowers. He was watching Maya explain the symbolism behind each bloom, her hands moving gracefully as she talked about new chapters and fresh starts. "Would you like to know more about the meanings behind different flowers?" Maya asked. "Elena's been teaching me, and it's fascinating how each one tells a story." "I'd love to learn," Richard replied. "Maybe I could come back tomorrow?" "We're here every day," Maya said, her cheeks flushing slightly. As Richard left with his New Beginnings bouquet, Elena chuckled softly. "Mija, I think that young man is going to be our best customer." "Elena, don't start matchmaking," Maya laughed, but there was no denying the flutter she'd felt when Richard smiled at her. Who, me? I'm just an old woman who delivers flowers to the wrong addresses. Over the following weeks, Richard did indeed become their best customer. He came in twice a week, always with a new reason to buy flowers, for his office, for his neighbors, new baby, for his grandmother's birthday. But Maya and Elena both knew the real reason for his visits. Each time Richard stayed a little longer, asking questions about the business, about Maya's art, about Elena's stories from the old country. He even started bringing coffee for all three of them, claiming the shop looked like it could use a coffee corner. Maya found herself looking forward to his visits more than she wanted to admit, unlike her previous boyfriends who had seemed intimidated. By her passion for art, Richard encouraged her creativity. He bought one of her paintings, a vibrant watercolor of sunflowers, and hung it in his office, telling everyone who visited about the talented artist who worked at his favorite flower shop. The transformation in all three of them was remarkable. Elena, who had been fading away in her loneliness, now woke each morning excited to get to the shop. Having Maya to mentor and watching a potential romance bloom between two people she cared about had given her a new purpose. Maya's art had exploded with new inspiration. The combination of working with flowers daily and feeling truly seen and valued had unlocked a creativity she never knew she possessed. Her paintings were selling in local galleries, but more importantly, she felt alive in a way she hadn't since her grandmother's death. Richard had discovered a gentleness in himself that his high-pressure corporate job had nearly extinguished. Spending time in the flower shop, learning about the delicate care required to keep living things beautiful, had reminded him of the man he wanted to be. The turning point came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Maya was arranging roses while Elena helped another customer, and Richard was sitting at the small table they'd added to the shop's corner, reviewing some work papers while keeping Maya company. "Maya," Richard said suddenly, looking up from his laptop, "would you like to have dinner with me, somewhere nice, but not because I'm trying to impress you with money, because I want to talk to you for hours without the interruption of other customers." Maya's hand stilled on the roses. She looked over at Elena, who was pretending not to eavesdrop while obviously listening to every word. "I'd like that," Maya said simply. Elena beamed and gave them both a thumbs up from across the shop. Their first date was at a small Italian restaurant where the walls were covered with local artwork. Richard had chosen it specifically because he thought Maya would appreciate supporting fellow artists. They talked until the restaurant closed, sharing dreams and fears, family stories and childhood memories. "Can I tell you something?" Maya said as they walked slowly back toward the flower shop where her car was parked. "Anything." When Elena delivered those flowers to me that first day, I had been having the worst week. I was questioning everything, whether I was good enough as an artist, whether I was honoring my grandmother's memory properly, whether I was just fooling myself thinking I could make it in this city. Those flowers felt like a sign that maybe beautiful things could still happen unexpectedly. Richard stopped walking and turned to face her. "Maya, meeting you has been the most unexpected beautiful thing that's ever happened to me. Before Elena mixed up those deliveries, I thought love was about grand gestures and expensive gifts. You've shown me it's actually about seeing someone clearly and choosing to care for them exactly as they are." 6 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Elena was arranging flowers for what she kept calling the most important delivery of her career. The bouquet was a masterpiece, Maya's artistic vision combined with Elena's decades of expertise, featuring white roses for new beginnings, sunflowers for devotion, and baby's breath for pure love. Richard had asked Elena to be part of his proposal plan, and she had insisted on creating the perfect arrangement to accompany the ring he'd chosen. Not the flashy diamond from his previous relationship, but a vintage sapphire surrounded by small diamonds that reminded him of Maya's eyes when she was lost in her painting. The proposal took place in Washington Square Park, on the same bench where Elena and Maya had first really talked. Elena had positioned herself nearby, pretending to feed pigeons while actually serving as the photographer, having learned to use Richard's camera for the occasion. "Maya Chen," Richard said, getting down on one knee while Elena held her breath, "you've taught me that the most beautiful things in life aren't planned, they're discovered. Will you marry me?" Through her tears, Maya said yes, and Elena cheered. so loudly that every pigeon in the park took flight at once. The wedding took place the following spring in the small garden behind Elena's flower shop. Maya wore her grandmother's dress, altered to fit perfectly, and carried a bouquet that Elena and she had designed together, a work of art made from flowers. As Elena watched Richard and Maya exchange vows they had written themselves, she felt Miguel's presence so strongly that she turned to look for him. Instead, she saw her 3 grown children, who had flown in to surprise her and witness the wedding of the young couple who had become like family to her. "Mama," her daughter Carmen whispered, sitting beside Elena during the ceremony, "you look happier than you have since Papa died." "Misha," Elena whispered back, "sometimes when you think your story is ending, the universe shows you it's just beginning a new chapter." After the ceremony, as guests mingled in the garden strung with lights and filled with the most beautiful flowers anyone had ever seen, Richard found Elena arranging leftover blooms. "Elena," he said, "I need to thank you." "For what, mijo?" "For making the most important mistake of your life." Elena laughed, the sound rich and full of joy. "You know what I learned from this whole adventure?" "What's that?" "There are no wrong deliveries, only flowers that haven't found their right home yet." As the evening wound down and the last guests departed, Maya and Richard insisted on helping Elena clean up. The 3 of them worked together in comfortable silence, putting away chairs and collecting plates, their movements synchronized like a family that had been working together for years rather than months. "So what's next for us?" Maya asked as they locked up the shop. "What do you mean?" Elena replied. "I mean, you gave us our beginning with your mixed-up delivery. Now we want to help give other people their beginnings too." Richard nodded enthusiastically. "We've been talking, and we want to expand the shop. Maybe add a small art gallery corner for local artists, offer wedding planning services, create a space where beautiful things happen." Elena's eyes filled with tears for what felt like the 100th time that day. "You want to keep working together?" "Elena," Maya said, taking the older woman's hands, "you're family now. We're not going anywhere." 1 year later, Elena's garden had become the most beloved flower shop and art gallery in the city. The walls displayed rotating exhibits of local artists, with Maya's paintings prominently featured. The shop hosted wedding consultations, grief counseling sessions with flower therapy, and even painting classes where Elena taught the meanings of flowers while Maya taught basic watercolor techniques. Richard had left his corporate job to manage the business side of their expanded venture, discovering that he had a natural talent for connecting with people and helping them find the perfect way to express their feelings through flowers and art. Elena, now 75, had more energy than she'd had in years. The shop was always full of people, and she had become everyone's favorite grandmother figure, dispensing wisdom along with beautiful arrangements. On the anniversary of that first mixed-up delivery, the 3 of them closed the shop early and sat in the garden, sharing a bottle of wine as the sun set. "Elena," Maya said, "do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't mixed up those addresses?" Elena considered this, swirling her wine thoughtfully. "I think about it sometimes. You would probably still be painting alone in your apartment, wondering if you were good enough. Richard would probably be married to someone he didn't truly love, still trying to buy happiness instead of growing it. And I," she paused, "I would probably be sitting alone in my apartment, just waiting to join Miguel instead of living the beautiful life he would want me to live." "So you're glad you made the mistake?" Richard asked. Elena smiled, looking around at the garden they had all created together, a space full of flowers, art, love, and laughter. "Mijo, it wasn't a mistake. It was the universe using an old woman's tired eyes to deliver exactly what 3 lonely hearts needed most." As they sat together in the fading light, surrounded by the flowers they tended and the love they had cultivated, Elena felt Miguel's presence one more time. But instead of the crushing sadness that had haunted her for so long, she felt his approval, his joy that she had found a way to keep living fully even in his absence. "You know what the most beautiful part is?" Maya said, breaking the comfortable silence. "What's that, mija?" "Tomorrow there will be more flowers to arrange, more art to create, more people to help find their perfect expression of love. Our story isn't ending. It's just getting more beautiful every day." Elena raised her glass to toast the young couple who had become her heart's greatest gift. To wrong deliveries that turn out exactly right. To finding family in unexpected places, Richard added. To Elena's garden, Maya concluded, where every flower finds its perfect home. As the stars appeared overhead, the three of them sat in perfect contentment, knowing that sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with the smallest acts of serendipity, like an elderly flower vendor delivering the wrong bouquet to exactly the right people at precisely the perfect moment. And if you were to visit Elena's garden today, you would see a small plaque by the door that reads, "Where every delivery is exactly where it needs to be." Below it, in Maya's artistic handwriting, is Elena's favorite saying, "There are no wrong deliveries, only flowers that haven't found their right home yet."